Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. I am a stranger in the earth, hide not thy commandments from me. My soul breaketh for the longing that it hath to thy judgments. At all times thou hast rebuked the proud that are cursed, which do err my commandments. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for I have kept thy testimonies. Princes also.
All right, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We'll be up here in a second. Okay. Well, I was in such a hurry to get the study started that I neglected to grab the scriptures from my Bible. So while I'm grabbing that, just mentioned we're studying the book of Ecclesiastes. I had this strong feeling that I had done it. And then I remembered I had started that channel where I was reading out of the Bible. And the first book I did was Ecclesiastes because I really wanted to do something with it. And it was a book I hadn't been in. And I thought I'd do that. I think I'm going to actually roll that channel into this channel at some point. Oh, I forgot to turn off my fan. All right. So here we have Ecclesiastes 1. And for good measure, I'm going to put 2 in there, just in case it's necessary. All right, we will begin reading momentarily. And usually, of course, we always kick it off immediately with reading. I don't chat up prior to the scripture much at all. All right. Ecclesiastes 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh. But the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he rose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Men cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is what shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old. It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former. Sorry, I need a sip of water. It's very hectic getting started here. There is no remembrance of former things. Neither shall there be any remembrance of the things that are to come with those that shall come after. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek. Let's start that verse over. And I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. I communed with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I am come into great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is vexation of spirits. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. We have to keep reading. I said in mine heart, go to now. I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure. Behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad. And of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was the good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. I made me gardens and orchards. I planted trees in them and all kinds of fruit. I made me pools of water, to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I got me singers and women I got me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men, as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And whatsoever mine eye desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. And I turned myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do that cometh after the king? Even that which hath been already done. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever, seeing that which now is in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man? As the fool. Therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. For all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it to the man that shall be after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor, wherein I have labored, and wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge, and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what hath man of all his labor, and of the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This is also vanity. For there is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I? For God giveth to a man that is good in sight. For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit. I think I got to do at least one more chapter. And that's okay. The study goes an hour. So that's a mere 10 minutes in. It's always the most important thing to take in the thought. No, actually, now we'll do one more chapter. Because it's an important addition to the initial thought. And it's a good first blast. I said, if it wasn't 12 chapters, I'd read the whole thing, and I do have a reading of it. In fact, very soon I got to move that over. But let's continue reading and stop talking. Ecclesiastes 3. To everything there is a season. Now connect this without making a big jump. I want to keep this connected. So he gives to the man that is good this and that, right? Okay. But that's vanity. Okay, go on. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence. A time to keep silence. And a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also that every man should eat and drink, and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God requireth that which is past. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time. I'm sorry. I want to read that verse again. God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. It wasn't an easy sentence. I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast. For all is vanity. All go unto one place. All are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knoweth the spirit of a man? Who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goeth downward to the earth? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? Okay, we're going to break there, because like I said, we're not going to read the whole book. Well, I don't know, man. This is what happened to me. I don't know. This is probably how I ended up reading it, because it's such a great thing. But I remember when I was reading, I was like, boy, I really want to start commentating on it. We'll do one more chapter and maybe we will do let me see what chapter 5 looks like. Yes, because it's 5, it starts being like a proverb almost. It's like, keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God. And it changes up a bit. This initial soliloquy, or whatever you want to call it, exposition, perhaps would be a better word, because it's all connected. That's why I want to read it as one big chunk to kick off Ecclesiastes. And we will reread each chapter as we analyze each chapter, of course. Did I put chapter 5 in there just like that? Did I skip chapter 4? Yeah, that's not the chapter I want to do. We're going to skip 5 for now, which is fine. We're not going to skip it. We're just going to read it when we get to it. We're going to deal with the first 4 chapters as a block, because I think, you remember, chapter divisions are arbitrary. They were not part of the original writing. They are very handy, and you might think of them as inspired. I don't. I mean, heck, they might be, but sometimes there's like things that are not quite exactly right. Oh, and some chapter divisions don't make sense, actually. There's a few mistakes. That's in my opinion, my humble opinion. Opinions are always humble, believe me. Well, they should be. Let me put it that way. All right. Because the word for opinion in Greek is the same word. We use it. We just transliterate it. It's heresy. Okay. Anyways, they may have a secondary word for that too. Don't consider me an expert on that. So I returned. Chapter 4. And considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there was power, but they had no comforter. Wherefore I praise the dead which are already dead more than the living which are yet alive. Yea, better is he than both they which hath not yet been, who hath not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Again, I considered all travail, and every right work, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. That is also vanity. Well, I didn't make a mistake. That is also vanity and vexation of spirit. The fool foldeth his hands together, and eateth his own flesh. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother, yet there is no end of all his labor. Neither is his eye satisfied with riches, neither saith he, for whom do I labor, and bereave my soul of good? This is also vanity. Yea, it is a sore travail. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better is a poor and wise child than an old and foolish king, who will no more be admonished. For out of prison he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor. I considered all the living which walk under the sun, with the second child that shall stand up in his stead. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and vexation of spirit. I think we could have stopped with 3. That's fine. We'll get 4 again and 5. Because I do think it began to break up a bit from the focus of the initial part, which is, this. Well, let's take a moment to talk about Ecclesiastes. This king is we suppose this to be Solomon. It's generally agreed that it is, some people don't think Solomon actually wrote it, just like they don't think anybody who is in the Bible actually wrote anything, whatever. It's a less relevant question. Like that, to me, is like when people, I was like, the history of the Bible, they're like, they think about in terms of like the forensic history of how it was written and came into being, which is an archaeological question more than anything. As far as we're not taught that is not what I mean. I mean by the effect of the Bible on the language, on the way we speak, even culture. That to me, that's like people should understand like how influential it is on the way we live right now, and on things they take for granted, on the way our civil society works, or used to work, or has worked for a long time and may be ceasing to function. All right, go back to chapter 1. So one of the things, Ecclesiastes, remember we recently studied Job. And much like Job, Ecclesiastes could be characterized as a somewhat unpopular book by some measures because of the great amount of doubt and negativity. I mean, you heard me reading it. He's like looking around at life and saying, wow, life sucks and then you die, basically. You know what I mean? Or it doesn't suck, but it can suck. You know what I mean? And he's saying, like, well, the best thing is to just have the best time you can while you're going. Enjoy yourself. That seems to be a thing. Enjoy yourself because everyone's dying. And see, here the thing is, we have to look at this through the lens of Christianity. There's a Christian Bible study. So I'm not going to be giving like, well, we will talk about the thing is, when you study wisdom literature, you have to use wisdom. And you have to think. And so he's putting out problems that need solutions, or at least explanations, or further understanding. Because then it's like he confronts what a lot of people call like the problem of evil. There's evil in the world. I mean, he doesn't question the existence of God because of it, but it's still a philosophical problem. Even whatever you believe about God, they believed about God and that things were difficult in the world and they accepted it. Today we have problems with that because, as I see when I let my kids go to this little vacation Bible school, because most of it's just having fun, and then they report to me what's going on, and it's very interesting, the kinds of things that they teach. But the main thing, my main takeaway is just the need to always reprocess everything into a very positive message, which basically boils down to, I'm with you always, even to the ends of the earth. I mean, that might as well be the only verse they care about. And it really feels like that. I mean, literally the names of the things that they use at that church, as far as they name it stuff that sounds like that's what they have in mind. And it's like, I don't want to start giving off too many signals because of whatever, because my kids are going there. But, anyways, this relentless positivity fails to confront the reality of people's existence, which is that life is not all buttercups and roses. And after you become a Christian, it doesn't change. Meaning, well, your life will change. I don't mean that. But life, the world, won't change. your perspective on the world will change. You know, your perspective on a lot of things will change when you are filled with faith. And the more filled with faith you are, the more that perspective will change into be a faith-filled perspective, which is the way you want to be, because it's much more happiness there. And Solomon did not have the revelation that we have of Jesus and his sacrifice and of the resurrection of the dead. That's the piece of the puzzle. And there is a moment where I feel like it gets like it's almost like begging to be plugged in. But he couldn't plug it in because he didn't know. And like I said, when you read Job and Proverbs, there are certain little like suggestions. Like I say, it's like, you know, as someone who cautions people about how they study the word, you don't want to read too much into things, right? We don't want to be too, reading things into it, and especially what we read into it. And I don't, reading into, well, we want to read, see, you want to read the scriptures and then let the meaning go into you, as opposed to having an idea of what it's supposed to mean and then reading that into the Bible. That's usually what reading into means. You read the meaning into it. So like when I said, I saw a thing online where there was a legalistic group of Christians, and they had posted this study about Galatians, and they were like, how Galatians actually proves you should keep the law. And they literally had a study about that's what Galatians is really about. And they would just read that meaning into everything he says. And it's possible to do that. Just like when we go to the Old Testament, I'm going to read Christianity into Ecclesiastes. Now that is not, I'm going to still hold in my mind perfectly clear what he understood. But why would this book be unpopular? Again, it's like I said, because pastors like having to deal with, when you tell people to take a simplistic approach to the Bible and that they should be generally taking things literally, and they give you a verse and they expect you to just wouldn't, like I said, be strong and courageous. I am with you always. Saith the Lord. Wonderful. But what does that mean? Like, when I am with you when you lie and when you cheat and when you steal. It's like, well, maybe not. That's not what he means. It's not that he's not with you when you do those things. It's that he ain't with you. You know what I mean? Are you with me? You know what I mean? That metaphorical with me? Are you with me or are you not with me? Right? He that is not with me, he that is not against me, is what he said actually at one point. But that's the point. It's like there are other ways of, you don't have to be physically with someone to be with them. Because it means on a different level, connected more on a metaphysical level, on an ideological perhaps, or a religious level. So it can be difficult because you have to have a little nuance here. You have to confront Solomon's gaps in his understanding. And he even kind of talks about it in here. You feel like that. Like he's like, I have all this wisdom, but there's something I just don't understand, or I can't quite get, or let's look at it line by line. Well, there was one place, whatever. There was one part when he said something I was like, oh, that's... we'll just wait till we get there. I do like this book, because there's a lot of interesting questions to be looked at. Okay. The words of the preacher, that's what Ecclesiastes means. It's the preacher. Ecclesia is the Greek word from which we get the word church. It means a called out body. But this Ecclesiastes is the preacher of the called out body. So that's what it means, the preacher. The Hebrew word, we could look at that, but let's see. The preacher is koheleth, right? It means the collector of sentences. A preacher. And that makes a lot of sense, because that's what a preacher does. He collects the sentences, the words. Here we have a nice collection of sentences here. I'm a sentence collector. And it's all these sentences, and it's what the sayings of the divine, the inspired writings and the inspired sayings of the wise. Like I said, and they have to, when you say the Bible is inspired by God, and let people think that means that God actually wrote the Bible himself, then Ecclesiastes is going to seem weird. Because for one, it doesn't say the words of God, it says the words of the preacher. Now, the words of the preacher, this man, Solomon, was given divine wisdom. So, whatever he has, like I said, it's like he talks about how he decides to I'm going to just get drunk and be wise at the same time and stuff. We're going to analyze that. But because he said, I'm trying to do this to figure out life. Like, what's the point of all this? These are the things that men do to try to seemingly to feel better. They want to rejoice and laugh and have a good time and drink and have a party. And is that what life is all about? So, and his assessment of life as he has looked at it, you assume this is later in life. He was the son of David. Obviously, that means that this book claims to be written by Solomon. Solomon is not calling himself by name. This is not unusual, you don't necessarily name yourself. Call himself the son of David was enough. It wasn't, Rehoboam. Oh, no, Rehoboam was his grandson. What am I talking about? It wasn't, so I was just thinking about this character. The guy with the hair. Absalom, my son Absalom. Wasn't Absalom, he was dead. Or the other usurper. No, vanity of vanity, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. 5 times in the same sentence. Is it always the same word in Hebrew? That's important. Habal. Yeah, it's different forms of the same word. I'm sorry, I didn't actually bring up the preacher for you before. But I'll bring this Hebel up since it's used so much in this book of Ecclesiastes. Where is my... There it is. Okay. Here I am, Bible Hub. Let's take a look. Hebel. So, emptiness or vanity, figuratively, something transitory or unsatisfactory, often used as an adverb. Altogether, that means it'd be, attached to a verb at that point, obviously. Or rarely in the absolute habal, from habal, emptiness or vanity. What does habal mean? But this is what we would expect. Emptiness, to become vain, foolish, empty. Okay. Empty, empty, empty. Everything's empty. Life is empty. That's the wisest man who ever lived, or one of the wisest, right? It's certainly at his time, right? He was the wisest who had ever been in Jerusalem, as he said. And also acknowledging that there were more kings of Jerusalem, through the Jebusites and stuff. There had been other kings of Jerusalem. Yeah. And so vanity, vanities, saith the preacher, vanity, vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh on? That's the primary question I'm going to talk about. What do you get for it all? You work all your life for what? And he says basically for the joy you had in your work and the enjoyment you get out of eating and drinking and whatever it is. He'll get to other things like your wife. You enjoy your wife. He's like, hey, good thing. Because that's what he says. Like, enjoy the good things in life. Here's the thing. You are not forbidden the good things in life, but we should enjoy them in moderation. That's why we enjoy women as men. We enjoy the company of women in a sexually pleasurable way. We enjoy it in the modified way. If we confine it to, we have one woman and we marry her for our entire life. And that's the moderate way to enjoy sexual pleasure. You don't go having sex with every woman in the town, even if you could, because it's not like, it's not like that's available to most people or to anyone for all, because there's good girls out there and all the bad girls. Anyways, I've always liked my good girl. I was so happy to find her. But that's the point. It's like there is a permissible amount of pleasure. Jesus fed the 5,000 and say, yeah, they should fast. No, I didn't want them to faint in the wilderness. Come on. Don't send people away hungry. People should have their stomachs filled. He said, this is the gift of God. We enjoy eating. So much so that some people think that that's what heaven is about. It's not. You're not going to be hungry in heaven. You will never hunger again nor thirst again. Well, what about food? Will there be food? You can eat. Jesus demonstrated after the resurrection that he could eat. I'm just saying he didn't need to eat. He didn't need to eat anymore. in the glorified body. And it says you will never hunger again. It could mean that you have everything provided for you, actually. That's another thing. But I don't think but my main point would be like the moderation we're supposed to exhibit on earth doesn't get thrown out the window once we're done. They're like, now we can just cast off all restraint. Cookies, cookies, cookies without consequences. And it's so weird because it shows the spirit of like, you don't get it. It's like, no, moderation in all things. The reason there are consequences for overeating is because God wants you to learn to be moderate. Now, there's more to it in our society than just overeating. There's definitely more to it. There's more afoot. The nutritional value of our food is so low that I think that's what makes people so ravenous. If you eat nutritionally good food, you're not as hungry for as much filler. That's why they design the foods that people eat. These processed foods, the highly processed foods. Like a processed food is anything. Flour is processed, okay, but how was it made and what kind of Okay, so it's it's organic or whatever. It's not that processed. But then you take these weird things that aren't food ingredients and combine them, and they make them as addictive as possible, and so you're hungry for more. Because just like with cigarettes, in fact, the people who made cigarettes are the people who made all the addictive food. And we had an explosion of obesity after the 80s. So this is not about gluttony. It's about greed in many cases. But that doesn't relieve us of the responsibility of taking care of ourselves. I mean, because here's the thing. If we surrender to obesity, we will die. Just as certainly as if we throw ourselves off a temple. You just have more time on the way down to change your mind. And that's sometimes the deadliest thing. Because you say, I can turn this around, and you're dead. Okay? So turn it around before it's too late. Same thing with a lot of sins. A lot of things. It's like you want to start working on it now. I've always been of that attitude. I've been working on everything that I see wrong with me immediately and always. Like I said, some things you don't get an opportunity very often to see. Like you don't get a chance to do a good Samaritan. How many times do you find someone beat up on the side of the road? You ever found anyone beat on the side of the road? Where you could have done something? No. Most of you probably have never experienced that. But you may experience some lesser version of it, right? But I mean, and you can, until you're confronted with those situations, you don't know how you're going to react. And so when you get to there, you find out, you say, okay, I could have done better, or, I did terrible, or whatever, but, and then, but what? When you repent, how will you know that you've changed? Not until you get to the side, not really. You may know because I think when you truly feel sorry, like not, like just when you're alone with God and not trying to tell anyone else you're sorry, but you're just sorry for your sins. And it's not a show in any way, it's like, it's not trying to get something. Sometimes people apologize to fix relationships with people who they see. Understandable. But with God, you don't really have to, because he's not demanding apologies, not right now. He's quiet. He's got that still small voice. It doesn't change. It's always speaking. It's always true. Never goes away. So the problem is we live and then we die and we lose everything. Of course, we know the profit is that by doing God's will, we will, not by doing God's will. Well, the first thing is, saying God's will, number one, is that we should believe on the name of his son, Jesus Christ. That's his will. And this is, that you should believe on Jesus Christ and love one another. That's John 15. That's what he wants from us. The most important thing. Okay, I don't want to ever hear anyone think I teach differently. You're never saved by works. I despise legalism. Anyone ever hear me teach on this subject knows I do. I don't believe in going back to the Old Testament, and I don't believe you have to do the law of Christ to earn your way into heaven. That's also wrong. It's not that we have a new law to govern our way into heaven. No, we aren't. Our way into heaven is by the grace of God through our faith. And faith is a gift. That's not of yourself. If you have faith, and I know this is like so true. when I received the Holy Ghost, I was so doubting, but I put forth like a tiny bit of faith. And it helped me understand what he meant by the mustard seed to move a mountain, because I had even probably less faith than a mustard seed, and I moved God. You know? As far as I'm concerned, that's what I saw. It doesn't matter what you think. If you think that, you don't have to believe me. It doesn't matter. But if you want to believe me, seek it for yourself. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall be found. I don't think I'm special. I always hear from, I don't hear from thousands of people, but I'm certain there are thousands, and I've heard from dozens, that's true, dozens of people who also have remarkable experiences with the Lord, where he demonstrates his reality to them in a way that convinces them. But when they tell you the story, like before when I was more of a doubter, I would go, well, hey, I'm sure you believe that happened because I think you're an honest person, but I think you probably just, something else was going on. And, I think I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just thinking maybe you misinterpreted what happened. And that's how people reacted to me when I talked about getting the Holy Spirit and power coming on my hands and my lips and my ears and my feet, quite specifically. Because it wasn't there to convince them. He was convincing me. He was giving me faith. Me, who needs a boost. I still need a boost. I talk to him about it all the time. I'm like, I need more faith. But I don't really... It's like patience. Like, what you need? You get more faith? By having your faith tried. And that's not really a great moment. Like by going through something rotten where your faith is sort of like redeemed, where you're like, you feel good. Oh, of course, I should have faith. Right. I need some more harrowing experiences, Lord. And actually what the truth is, the Lord preemptively has put me through harrowing experiences to provoke me to ask for more faith and to also give it to me. That's all his plan, because I'm his workmanship. He's the one who's doing stuff to me, acting on me. I'm reacting to him always. That's how it always is. God is not like reacting to us. We are reacting to him and the path he has set before us. I mean, I don't mean like in every... Yeah, we are reacting to him. No. God acted first. Long ago, he spoke. He made it. It's all done. From the foundation of the world. So there is profit. Jesus said, lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt. One wiser than Solomon was there. One wiser than Solomon. Wiser than Daniel. Wiser than any. Wiser than the devil is our Lord. So the profit you can get, we know. But you understand, this is indicative of the pain of humanity and of humanity's existence. And when you confront people who have pain, and you want to preach the gospel to them, you have to learn empathy to understand what they're going through. That's why he said later on, there's a time for every purpose. There's a time to weep with them who weep. There's a time also to tell people that to dry their tears. You know what I mean? There's not a one-size-fits-all the time solution. That's why it annoys me. God is always with you. Yeah, except when, like Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, I know, and if you know my teaching, that I don't believe God ever forsook Jesus. Not really. But just that Jesus was conveying the feeling of being forsaken, and also that he was quoting Psalm 22. But I do believe he was quoting it, but not in a stoic sort of, hey, by the way, Psalm 22. Excuse me. Oh, he wouldn't be like, he'd be like, Psalm 22. You guys, you remember Psalm 22? My God, why have you forsaken me? They're like, what is he saying up there? We can't hear him. Sound like he said, my God. I don't think it went down like that, folks. He quoted it because it was perfect for the moment. Because it was the psalm that said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then it goes on to say all these painful events that happened. And you think, these are not events that happened in David's life. And as you read it, you realize these are events that happened in Jesus' life right up to his crucifixion, where it says, they pierced my hands and my feet. And that was 1,000 years before Jesus. But that psalm also teaches that God does not forsake those people Like that's always the message of Job. When you see someone persecuted and hurt and in pain, don't say, well, he must be guilty. Otherwise, God wouldn't let that happen to him. That's one of the curses. People always think, they come around to thinking like, well, you must have done something to deserve it. You wouldn't be in this situation if you weren't guilty. The message of Job was, no, you ought to pity those who are suffering. It's very important. We should pity those that suffer. Even your enemy. You know? Because your enemies don't know what they're doing. Believe me, if they had the faith to understand and know what was going on, even though they hate God, as the Apostle Paul said in Corinthians, that they would, this hidden wisdom, if they knew it, they would not have crucified the Lord. The Roman guards all would, if they knew that he indeed was, like when they were mocking him as the Son of God, they did not believe he was the Son of God. If they had, they would have feared and backed off and never have done that, even if they were still the wickedest men ever. I'm not saying they were, but I'm just saying even if. And Paul's point about that is like, God hides this wisdom to allow them to do these evils. You say, why does that happen? It's like, it's part of God's plan, because to allow wickedness to continue so that we may resist it, so that we may suffer from it, and that all these examples and lives would come out that remember, though I try to be good, I am also a creature capable of great evil and of sin, and have done things that I'm certainly ashamed of and don't like to repeat. But I've turned from that, and like I said, the past is not gone. It comes around again. I said, that's why some men's sins go before them to judgment. Other men's follow after. You know how you send your sins before you to judgment? Confess them to the Lord and repent, and your sins will go to the throne. I said, we're saved by grace, but I still repent for my sins, not to get forgiven, but because I need to do what's right. I'm an adopted son of God. That's what Christianity does to you. You become a son of God. Suddenly you want to do God's will, but the flesh is in the way. The flesh lusts against spirit, spirit against the flesh. So you have trouble doing the things you want to do. But ultimately, you do more of those things than the other. I do much more of what I want to do than what I don't. I haven't been like in raising my kids. I did a couple things I really regret, but I did mostly things I don't really regret. And their judgment is they don't hate me. They would probably say something better than that, but I'm not going to say, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. But I will say this, that, again, a man should not glory in being in like an office or I'm the so-and-so, but in what you've genuinely done without being full of pride, though. That's a careful thing. Because there's a certain amount of joy we take in our labors. Just like in my children. When I see my children do well, it makes me happy. Some people call that pride. It's a form of pride. It's a benevolent form of pride. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I feel good because of something I did that resulted in this. So as long as I don't start thinking, therefore, I'm better than people. Feeling good is one thing, and that have that good feeling. Allow yourself to enjoy the fruit of your labor, your children, your grandchildren. There's nothing wrong with that. But of course, the ultimate reward is not to, I'm sitting here thinking as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, I want to leave my house to my kids. I want to make sure they're like well provided, that they're able I want to see that they're all strong, healthy, and, able to live and continue carrying on with life. But I'm not going to be. I care about them. But I think about like how many generations of grandchildren can I possibly care about? Because I'll never see. Even if I live to be 120, would I see the 10th generation of my grandchildren if there was such a generation? That there's a diminishing return. Ultimately, everything is lost. And it's the ultimate tragedy. It makes life vain and empty. And why do you think people kill themselves? What's the point of going on? Well, because there is good things. Like Paul, like he said about himself, like, I'm a king. I have it great. And I'm like, but I see this, and like, what about the guys that come after me? That's rough. So we can have profit in the labor, but you can't take it with you. Can't take the wealth here with you. You have to make the wealth that appears in heaven, but that wealth comes from doing God's will. Now, first and foremost, like I said, it is to believe on his Son, and that is salvation. But after you are saved, you are his workmanship. And it's only natural, of course, because we believe in Jesus, that we want to do things that please him. And let me tell you, you are required to do these things, not to be saved, but because you are his son. And if you do not do these things, he will chastise you, and you will begin to do them. You know what I mean? This is not games. Pastor, you don't have to. No. You will obey. I'm not here to be that kind of person that I'm not, I'm some like, a seminary sissy. I don't come from there. I receive power. And I know because he's taught me. You do what you're told. You will do what you are told, or you will be chastised of the Lord. He is very patient. He lets you get away with a lot of things. A lot of things. I know. I'm only yelling at my former self, at my own self. You know what I mean? Because I know. It's just people who resist the truth anger me. You know what I mean? Like what they say. Sissy seminarians. You can do whatever you want. Because that's what makes people come to church. Oh, good. I don't want to have some drill sergeant telling me I better obey. You know why? Because the disobedient do not inherit. If you really believe in Jesus, you're gung-ho to obey. And I know you're a disobedient sinner. Don't worry. We'll get you into shape. And we're not going to beat you up. I'm just going to tell you what you got to do. I think anyone who ever listens to me preach, I'm extremely generous in my opinions, in my tolerance of people. Certainly in we all got to live on the planet together. We all got to live in peace. It makes me think about the time for war. It's hilarious. It's weird. It's weird to me that the president doesn't know that Iran moved all their nuclear materials out, but I know because I heard them talking about it and I saw the satellite photos. But they didn't show that to him. And that's messed up. And they didn't get a declaration of war, and the military went to war. That's illegal. The generals that carried that on, everyone who obeyed those orders obeyed an illegal order. He didn't even get congressional authorization, much less a declaration of war. We got to send our B-52s to bomb someone else's nuclear program that they have every right to have. I'll tell you what, if I was in Iran, I'd want nukes. For sure. Now, especially. Whew, we need some nukes because people keep bombing us. That's why they need them. And we could make a nuclear-free world by not being such bullies. I don't want to talk about that because it's not the subject now, so we're going to go back. But it's very pertinent right now. I just want to say, it's hey, I got to drop at least one sentence on that subject. Because I helped him. But I voted for a man of peace. It turns out he lied. That's unfortunate. That's disappointing. But you can't just wave your hand and make it go away. As we're about to find out. These forces people don't understand what they get into. They don't understand the thing that hath been shall be. Do you think this time there won't be a big conflagration? It's not going. Oh, it's all going to turn out fine. We can just drop bombs on people and they're not going to fight back. Okay. Hopefully they're wise and do it in a way that puts us at a disadvantage. I don't know. Whatever. One generation passeth away. Another comes. The earth abideth forever. Earth's been around a long time. It's interesting to me how even in the Bible, I don't know, when they talk about things being ancient, I guess because I'm probably prejudiced based on the knowledge I have of geology and all that stuff that makes me think of I think beyond the surfacey story of one, I never bothered to count backward in the genealogy. So as far as I'm concerned, I have no idea when all that stuff took place. At least not academically, but I certainly don't think the Earth's only been around 6,000 years, though. there's, I don't know. There's interesting things about those periods and all that. But anyways, that's off the subject too. Well, it's right here. The earth abideth forever. Does it? There'll be a new heaven and a new earth. My teacher used to talk about how that meant really like renewed, which I could buy, and like the earth made new, just like we will have a new body. But it's going to be not completely alien from the old body, which is interesting. There's a connection, like a seed to a tree type connection between the body that now is and the body that shall be. I mean, there's similar, but not the same. In some ways, the same but not the same would be a better way of putting it. Like, because, like genetically. Like the way a zygote is identical to me, my zygote would have been, because of the genes. But obviously, I'm at least 200 times bigger. 200,000 times bigger, sorry. I was talking about zygote. Something that would fit, like, Why not? But you guys, aren't they? They're almost visible, aren't they? The egg. One generation passeth away. Yeah. The sun comes up and it goes down, hasteth to his place where he arose. Again, this is just the perspective of someone on earth. The way it's like, look at the sun comes up and it goes around. It's not trying to make some sort of scientific commentary on the nature of the universe, and it should not be. The Bible should not be mined for that kind of information, because that's not what it is. He's just using the natural senses to observe the way things work. All he's really saying is that the cycle of the sun is repetitive, and it goes on and on and on and on. It just keeps going. The wind keeps going round and round and round. It goes south, north, it goes different directions, but it keeps going. And so it must be going around in circuits, and which is actually very true. It whirls about and goes in different circuits. You get the same winds from time to time too. You notice that, right? You're like, oh, we got a south wind today, because it just blows because of the directions. And the geography also. Geography does create wind and weather, actually. Based on, just like look at the coastal plain of America where it's all rained and all that. And then look at the other side of the mountains where it's all dry and desert. That's typical. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. And unto the place from whence the rivers come thither, they return again. He's got some sort of rudimentary understanding of the water cycle. He's like, the water keeps going around. It goes down to the sea. It keeps going in there, but it never gets any deeper. At least, not in his lifetime, right? Though the sea has been deeper. Much deeper, in fact. The whole world. I'll tell you this. I was telling you this. I'm like, there is, even scientists say there was a point where the whole earth was covered with water. They think it was like, 5 billion years ago, but still. And then the land emerged. And I speak of just like the idea of creation even, because it's supposed to be God moving on the water, and then out of the water comes forth the land and stuff. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. You have to keep working to get anything. And not only that, as I said, the senses are kind of insatiable. Like, I told my wife, it's like, I realize it's like, I don't know if this is a good example. Well, I'll use a better example. Like, you can, just like Jesus, he fasted, but afterward he was an hungered. Eventually you're going to get hungry. He was still able to finish the fast before he ate. He did not command the stones that be made bread. And I don't know why. He just said, man shall live, not live by bread alone, but by every word that cometh out of the mouth of God. I don't know why he couldn't do that, or he shouldn't do that would be a better way to say it. I've had some ideas, but we're not going there right now. Now this notion, well, and so the point is, like, you can eat, but tomorrow you got to eat again. You can, and the same thing with addictions of men. Like, here's the thing. I remember when I used to, when I used to look at pornography, well, how much was enough? There was never enough. It was always like looking for more. Why? It's just, and it's like, do you look at back? It's an impulse. It's a bad impulse. You cannot give yourself to it. You have to just avoid those things. The devil, like they say, the old saying, it's not a proverb, but it's not from the Bible, but it's a bit of truth in it. The idle hands of the devil's workshop, or the devil's whatever, his tools. But it's true. If we're not busily engaged in good activities, that's when we get up to mischief and to bad things. And the thing is, there's no end to the degree to which we can find ourselves dragged into different things. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. The sense of also man always wanting to see more. Like later on, he talks about the man who always wants to get more. Yet he doesn't have a son. He doesn't have a brother. You think of a lot of these billionaires who have no... At least you look at Trump and you think like, okay, that guy, he's got a family to provide for, and he looks after them. Some of these childless guys, you wonder like, what is their... They're like stressing themselves out day and night and just money. And in the end, whatever they do in the world, a few generations later, people are barely going to remember them. And then eventually nobody will remember them. Like, think about how many people's names of people who are alive in the year 900 you can mention. How many people who were alive in the year 900 do you know? Can you name them? Can you name one? Anyone would be alive in the how about the 900s? And if not that year, I bet there's some century in the past, maybe the recent past. For me, once you get past, 1066, okay, 1066, that was a Norman invasion, so I can start naming all kinds of people. In 900, well, that was probably Charles Martel, maybe in 900. I don't know. I don't know for sure. What? That's what I'm saying. How many people's, even I say Charles Martel, how many of you really know who that is? I know my wife probably doesn't. And that's not a big deal because I was a history minor. Okay. Political science major, history minor. What a dumb thing to go to school for, right? That's why I look like a construction worker. But this thing that hath been, it shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there's no new thing under the sun. This always made me think like, well, we have new things. All right, aren't cell phones new? I don't think that's really what he means. He's not talking about, he's like, he'd seen new stuff. That's not new. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that makes life not vain. This is just you tell me this is not more vanity and vexation of spirit for people? This is a vexation of spirit for many, many, many people. And those who make it actually have made it so in some ways because they try to manipulate your mind. Mostly for advertising purposes, but they're manipulating you. And some people, like I see it and I'm perfectly aware of it. Other people are kind of notice it, but it's like they don't understand what it is. And it confuses them and they can start thinking it messes with people's heads. And so it's not nice. And people get addicted to it. And, like I can't stomach the thing. I do like carrying it around in my pocket so I have a phone. And also I do like to listen to YouTube on the go. That's the best thing. Because now I used to have to dig around for audiobooks all the time. Now I can listen to Daniel Davis Deep Dive on my cell phone. All right. So is there anything where maybe he said, his assertion that there's nothing new? I'm going to go with saying, though I will disagree with him on a few points, that like, yes, indeed, he is right, but not in that sense of technology. Technology has never solved the human condition. People are still miserable. That's what he's saying. Rich people are miserable. They are not enjoying their life. And they have all this money and all this stuff. And they're miserable. I was talking about Robin Williams. This poor guy. I don't hate any of these famous people. Like some people despise celebrities. I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I even know who you are. that it makes you, if it all it troubles them, because like, I think it's a weird thing to have to be put in that position. It can't be good for your mind. They get put in these, and surrounded by people who I hope loved him, and but I get it because I know how you can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel very alone and very isolated and loneliness, and that's why I was thinking. 'Cause I know that when I've felt trending towards, you don't want to say the wrong. I don't want to get. I think I'm able to get away with saying a lot of things because my studies are so long, and if I say it fast enough, a word like suicide won't get through. They won't understand that I just said that. You know what I mean? So I've thought about those things, and at times in my life when things were down, it's like I can't say it never occurred to me. I always knew though that I felt it was for me impossible. I always thought when they call people who do that cowards, it never made sense to me because I always, as bad as things were, I think I chicken out. That's what I'd call it. I don't think I could do it. I just don't think I could. I don't think I could hurt myself. Mostly people kill themselves because they're hurting. Not because they want to hurt themselves. Because they're hurting. And they hurt so bad they think that they can escape the pain by suicide. And in part they do. But it's a terrible solution for for your problems. Especially when you consider that everlasting life is a possibility. I don't think I don't think killing yourself means you're going to go to hell automatically. But because I don't even believe in the torture. I don't believe in the eternal torture chamber. I do believe there is torment before the throne for those who deserve to suffer. But I do believe all are cast into a lake of fire, which is a second death, which is an actual death and is not just some sort of spiritual thing that happens to you when you're tortured forever. So you become like this living dead monstrosity who's being tortured yet is alive and can feel pain and suffer and all these things at the maximum level. To me, that's such a, they would choose to say, that's literal. I'm like, you're creepy. I'm sorry. Most people, though, they've been convinced that that's what the Bible teaches. I'm like, I know it's there, but I'm like, there's also, it says right there, the second death. They're juxtaposed. And to me, it's like a Rorschach test, like an ink blot. What do you see? An old woman or a young woman? What do you see? A torture chamber or a grave? I don't know, I see a grave. I'm not going to make a big case for that right here. We're about to be done, right? So the assertion, there's no new thing. Let me see if we're with the verse. Yeah, we'll consider ourselves up to verse 11, so we'll pick it up at 12 tomorrow. But let's just say one more thing about this first few uses. He's talking about the human situation. That, like I said, rich people are still miserable. Like everything I was reading, it still all applies. He didn't talk about Bronze Age stuff. He didn't say, we've always had bronze swords and iron has always been around. And look at my prehistoric computer. He's not saying we have smartphones. No, not that. He means humans keep doing the same things over and over again because they don't learn from the past and they forget. And that they say those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat human nature. Unless you fight against human nature, you will be its slave. By the power of God, of course. I mean that at all times. It's because we fight against the nature of the flesh by the power of the Spirit. The Spirit wrestles against the flesh, and against the two things are at odds with each other. The Spirit is hostile to the flesh in a certain way, as far as to the lust thereof. Certainly not to the flesh body per se, because the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. The flesh itself, much like the meat sacrificed to idol, there's nothing innately unclean about it. That's what Peter learned about Gentiles when he saw the big sheet let down with all the animals. They shouldn't consider men common or unclean. All right, well, there we go. We've begun the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to continue tomorrow. We'll pick it up at verse 12. And last thing about 11, the remembrance of former things I said about history. It's like, yes, we have a little better history recording, but like, if we blow ourselves up with a nuclear holocaust, believe me, in 500 years, they will barely be able to understand or remember what this used to be. And in 10,000 years, they'll have completely forgotten. Now, I would like to think that the Lord will return before all that happens, but I don't have I got like one prophecy that makes me think it could be relatively soon, and I'm personally convinced, but I got no evidence for you other than like what I've talked about, that it's sort of inevitable. The sun is going to flare at some point, and it'll probably be preceded by a bunch of other stuff. And best be about our Father's business, Best be about the Lord's business, because when he comes, he wants to find us so doing. He said, "Blessed is that servant whom when his Lord cometh, he findeth him so doing." So doing what? So doing his will. I said that just drives me nuts, that people would say, "Oh, you don't have to do the will of God." No. Don't say it like that. Say, yes, you must do the will of God, but not to be saved. It's because you are a son of God. It's because you have been saved. You must do it, and he will. Don't worry, he's going to help you. You say, "No, look at. Will you resist? Are you saying you're going to refuse resurrection? Because if you refuse to do God's will, then you cannot live forever. Because that's one of his other commandments: live forever. And you can only live forever if you submit to his will, and not just to believe on his son. Well, it is to believe on his son, but to believe him, to know him is to love him. And to believe on him is to know him. I mean, you have to learn to know him. Otherwise, what do you believe in? If you don't know the person you believe in to some degree, or what, it's like, it doesn't take a whole lot. Like I said, you don't have to be. And the thing is, especially if you are obedient, you don't have to have a ton of knowledge of all the scriptural rigmarole. I don't think so. I don't think everyone has to be a teacher. Though we should all learn. Anyways. There's a time when, someone reasonably competent should be able to take up the mantle of teaching if they're reasonably competent. Meaning at least like on a fill-in basis. Like, I need someone to fill in a Bible study, and John, he doesn't regularly do Bible studies, but he's going to fill in, and there you go. And he's not as good, but he's competent. And yeah, we can all be at least competent. All right. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again next time. Until then, remember that the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. I am a stranger in the earth, hide not thy commandments from me. My soul breaketh for the longing that it hath to thy judgments. At all times thou hast rebuked the proud that are cursed, which do every my commandments. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for I have kept thy testimonies. Princes also.
Hey Jess, please let Frank know I probably won't be by till a bit late. Maybe more like 7 today. Just gonna run up there and do a little bit of painting.